opportunity given to me to introduce, or rather give you an overview of the program or proceedings. I would have normally done well on that, but then given the fact that we have very less of time and we have an excellent life learners who are here to share their words of wisdom with us, I wouldn't want to dwell much into all of that. Given the time limitations that we have at the outset, I would like, we have 4 speakers as you are all aware of. We have drawn the 4 speakers primarily to speak about the different aspects or facets or dimensions, call it whatever you will, on social responsibility. In my opinion or in our view, there are 4 different pillars on which social responsibility today would stand. There is a society or a system on one hand, and derived from society or the system is a bunch of beneficiaries. This could be individuals or people or something as a system that is abused. The third one is a donor or the donors, and eventually there is an intermediary or a set of professionals whom you can call as enablers. We have tried to draw from the speakers who have diverse life experience in each aspects of each facets of these pillars of social responsibility. Speaking about the society or the system and the expectations of the society from corporates on social responsibility as a dimension, we expect Justice Santosh Hegde to speak a bit about the compulsions or why social responsibility is relevant in a society. You know, what are the responsibilities of a corporate that perhaps that will have to be kept in mind by corporates if they have to be seen as being socially responsible. The next speaker will be Vandana Mahajan, who is going to be speaking about sharing her experience or the pain points of beneficiaries on the other hand. On one end of the spectrum you have a willing set of donors, on the other end of the spectrum you have a set of beneficiaries who seek assistance. And Vandana Mahajan, with her vast experience in her life, she is seen from a close quarters as to the pains these beneficiaries actually experience and what expectations that set of or those group of people have from corporates. It could be in terms of partnership or whatever that's required perhaps to make the social responsibility relevant and successful. We have Mr. Jacob Kurian, whom we expect to speak on the corporate and social responsibility. In the initial days of our deliberations when we started Vardhan, we were actually wondering whether corporate social responsibility is it an oxymoron at all? Is it an oxymoron? Can we trust corporates to be socially responsible? Have they lived up to their expectations, not just in India but worldwide? There are more of these questions, but I don't want to be judging or prejudging and passing a judgment on any of these aspects. So, a lot of the years will be to you, Mr. Jacob Kurian, today to listen on your views on whether a company or a corporate that would declare to the world that it's all about profits, you know, would you be willing to accept a diktat by the central government of making it mandatory for you to spend 2% of your profits every year on social causes? So that's the third one. And finally, to wrap up the whole evening, we have our knowledge and equity partner, Mr. Thomas Rafa and Kathy Rafa, who joined us, who flown in from Washington, D.C. just for this event, who will be sharing their experiences of what they have done, their views and their ways of social responsibility, how despite being a for-profit organization, how you could still be socially responsible. So we have tried to put together a team that we believe will immensely benefit us in our beliefs and knowledge and value systems and perhaps help make the social responsibility cause a success. Over to you, Smita, to introduce Justice Santosh Hegde, please.
So our first of the 4 special speakers we have this evening is a former Justice of the Supreme Court of India, former Solicitor General of India, and has been the local of the state of Karnataka. With his great knowledge and vast experience of upholding public interest, he will speak to us about the society and evolution of social responsibility in society. Please join me in welcoming Hon'ble Justice.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The idea of corporate social responsibility must have occurred to somebody in the bureaucracy or maybe the political bureaucracy included, because of their failures. If I'm right, I find from the Constitutional Assembly debates, they wanted to create a government which is responsible for all the well-beings of Indians. As a matter of fact, some of the members argued with the motion, saying that we Indians were never ever independent. We were under the rules of Rajas, Maharajas, foreigners. They made the laws which they liked and which was to their benefit. We had to perforce obey that law, otherwise we were punished. So they pleaded with the other members of the Constituent Assembly to accept a political system by which every Indian feels this country is mine, this governance is mine. And there was a system internationally available, the democracy. Meaning of the word democracy then was government of the people, by the people, for the people. With my 5 years experience in the institution of Karnataka Lokayukta, I'm of the personal opinion that definition has changed. It is today, according to me, government of some, by some, and for some. It is just passing on the buck today by seeing some successful institutions and asking them it's your responsibility to look after the welfare of the society while they are elected as leaders, representatives, and look after the interest of the people. If you read the Constitution of India, the entire responsibility of welfare lies with the government of India. Why are they passing it on to corporates now? Well, the reason is very simple. A Prime Minister of this country once said, of every rupee the government spends for the benefit of the poor in this country, only 15 paise reaches them. What is there left for benefit? I mean, rather social welfare. So every time an event takes place, you have to blame somebody for the failures. The best way is to find the richest person and show fingers at him. And make a law, you share your profit with the poor. Well, how will it be rooted? To the government. And will the 15 paise still reach there? Now, what is the basic problem? That is where I would like to say the responsibility lies with the society in which we live. I'm 74 years old. I've lived in many societies. Societies which followed values, societies which had lesser values than the previous society. And I think today I live in a society which has no values. It respects wealth and power only. Hard work, honesty has no place. That's the society in which we live. If society were to point out time and again when the things were going wrong, no, this is not what our values says. You have to share your profit with others. Then maybe the people would have accepted the directions or dictum of the society. Because ultimately we can't live by ourselves. We have to live in a society. We can't live in isolation. But unfortunately, that is not what's happening. If there is poverty in this country, which I admit there is, you can't hold the corporates responsible for that. Of course, their part is played, yes. But what is the administration is doing? We have enough laws. First of all, will the administration explain it to the people who can understand at least where does the money it collects by way of revenue goes? Is there a real shortage of money with the government of India or the state governments to take up welfare schemes? Whenever an election is going to take place, we come out with schemes for the benefit of the poor. In reality, how many such schemes have reached the beneficiaries? Ladies and gentlemen, unless we adhere to those values which our forefathers, where compassion was one of the most important values. Compassion includes one's concern for others. With lack of compassion, neither the government nor the society can really help. I'm extremely disappointed to live in a society in which I am today. I've seen many tragedies, and I've learned a lot of lessons. Today, we human beings are not really human beings. We might have born as a species called Homo sapiens, not as human beings. Maybe in the journey of life, if we acquire humanism, we might become human beings. And it should be the goal of every person, though not born as a human being, to die at least as a human being. I once read a Kannada statement from a writer who, amongst other things, he said, become what you want to become in life, but become a human being first. ಏನೇ ಆಗು ನಿನಗೆ ಬೇಕಾದವನಾಗು ಆದರೆ ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು, the statement says. And I agree with that statement. In a country where rich can become richer and the poor can remain where they are, if not go down, and the society doesn't protest, what sort of a society we are in? One example, after one other statement, of my experience. The other statement is, I think we are losing that character which should be there in every person, which I call it as greed over need disease, which will never ever allow you to be satisfied with what you legitimately earn. You want more and more. I think basically we have to change the society. Another example is, in 2008, a handicapped tailor came to me from Bangalore with a 6-month-old child and the mother. They folded their hands and said, "Sir, please look after this child. We want to run away." I said, "Pick up the child and sit down and tell me what's your problem." He said, "This child is otherwise perfectly all right, but born with the rectum sealed, not opened. It eats through the mouth, can't pass it through the rectum, so it defecates through the mouth. The local doctor said, take the child to a super specialty hospital where a pediatric surgeon will rectify it. They took the child to a government medical college hospital. The pediatric surgeon said, after examining the child, yes, I can do it, but it will cost so much money. The husband and wife gave all the money they had. He said, for this money, I will make a hole near the rib cage so that the fecal matters can keep going out from there. I also could have got the problem out of my hands by giving a letter of recommendation to A government hospital or B government hospital. But I wanted to try something different. So I wrote letters to 4 or 5 private hospitals are better than government hospitals. They are the same. But I wanted to try. The letter read as Lokayukta, I'm beginning to give it a future to this child. We have no money. And one hospital in the old airport road said, send the child today, we'll do it. And they did it. The child is perfectly all right today. Can there be a better example of corporate social responsibility than what is being imposed or sought to be imposed by a governmental diktat? That is what is needed rather than the government diktat. Why can't the government rectify its mistake? This doctor, God was very generous in giving him the education to become a pediatric surgeon. He comes and joins government hospital, which today is meant for poor people. He knows the patient who go there are all poor people. He had the capacity to do it, the knowledge to do it, but he didn't do it. Is he a human being? And this is one of the hundreds and hundreds of experiences that I had. The failure of discharge of duties even in cases of emergencies like this. So when people start talking about the failure of administration, you try to divert their attention to pointing out others who had nothing to do with the failure of the administration. Sorry. I think, though morally every institution, every person has an obligation to contribute towards the benefit of somebody who doesn't have, making a law in regard to that, I think it is just diverting the attention of the people towards some other direction. Why do you pay income tax? Why do you pay so many taxes that we pay? Isn't it a contribution of the society towards the benefit of the have-nots? If corporates are not honest, there are laws to punish them. If they want to contribute, very good, let them contribute. But don't make it compulsory as a law. Because law is normally made when there is no honesty in the society. When criminals are there, you make it law against crime. When you want money, you make a law by way of a taxation. If somebody escapes that taxation liability, there is a law made to punish him. Now, where is the failure in this system of administration I'm talking? Not about moral obligations, I'm talking about legal, constitutional obligations. Where is the failure of any institution outside the administrative institutions, that is either political or executive institutions? I don't think this country does not have the resources if what they have is properly utilized. Ladies and gentlemen, in 50s we had one scam called the Jeep scam. The amount lost was 52 lakhs. There are many scams in between. In 86 we had a major scam called the Bofors. Amount lost was 64 crores. 2000 we had two major scams. Commonwealth Games, 70,000 crores was lost. Same year, Spectrum 2G, 1,76,000 crores of rupees. 2012 Colgate, 1,86,000 crores of rupees. Can this corporate social responsibility contribute more than that? If you are not allowed to siphon out this money and really utilize it for the benefit of the social obligation, you wouldn't require that. And who are the people who benefited from these scams? Yes, there may be corporates also, but there are others whose responsibility was to see that these zeros in these scams do not increase. The budget of state of Karnataka for 2013-2014 was 1,83,000 crores. And in one scam, this country loses 1,86,000 crores. How can the people of Karnataka benefit or anybody else benefit? If 15% of the allocated money is only goes for development, how can it? Therefore, in my humble opinion, you cannot force people to donate. You cannot create a moral liability by way of a law. If corporates want to donate, which is the morality requires the corporate to do so, they should do that. But not by compulsion, not by coercion. Because there is no guarantee that the money contributed would certainly go to the object for which it is being collected. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity and sharing my views. Though whatever I said might not be within the four walls of the objects of this seminar, but I wanted to bring it out of my system and make you all know of my experience in the institution of Lokayukta. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Since Justice Santosh Hegde is requested to be pardoned and to be leaving a bit early, we would like to, as a token of our appreciation of his time and spending some time with us, here is a token of our love and affection for you, sir.
Actually, it gives a good corporate
Thank you very much for your time.
She's a MA gold medalist in social work and has worked in various capacities and has been associated with organizations like UNICEF, UNAID, Government of India as a member of the national group of Mahila Samakya program. She has been also associated with advisory roles with the International Council of Women and many such organizations. She's going to today talk to us and give us a peek into the world of non-profit. She's going to introduce us, give a perspective to the concept of giving from a beneficiary angle. Please join me in welcoming Vandana Mahajan.
Good evening, friends. I was, after Justice Hegde's outpouring, I am finding it very difficult to lift my spirits. And the kind of a prepared script I have comes from a very, very optimist and a kind of pragmatic, optimist and yet a very pragmatic outlook, because I am a practitioner. So, let me try sort of, bring in the more okay, let me try, get my hands, dig my feet in and see what happens. So with that kind of a spirit, I'm trying to sort of, block the, but a very, very powerful kind of a presentation which Justice Hegde has done. Still, I think there is the positivist in me, the constructivist in me, and the practitioner in me, which asks me to go on. So I would like to begin with a quote that I have chosen for its core of simplicity to put us all here, present here in a reflective space. It's a quote by Rebecca Erwin. She is the head of the philanthropy of the Rolex watches. And when I read about the philanthropic work being done by Rolex, I realized that Rolex has been doing amazingly interesting work in the area of for the last 40 years. So the quote goes as that you could decide if you want to do well or you want to do good. There is a distinction. Everybody wants to do well, but are they doing good as well? This thought leads me to another leading question which has been asked perennially and still continues to be very hotly contested, which is, can there be growth without equality? And in this context, there is nowadays economists are sort of taking it as a Bible, the Thomas Piketty book on capital in the 21st century. So Thomas Piketty has, vis-a-vis this question of can there be growth without equality, in his latest work, he has very powerfully kind of, after making the analysis and critique of the neoclassical economics of growth as an end in itself and the flaws of the long-held view of the trickle-down benefits, Piketty has called for building an economic agenda which promotes broader development through social intervention to eradicate inequality and social disparity. And coming back to the, and I also feel that India, our development sector has evolved quite substantially over the last few decades and is now witnessing unprecedented interest and investments across the value chain. So if we see the kind of policy, economic and social policy initiatives in our country, they have been guided, even if it is in theory, they have been guided by a strong perspective to address the concerns of the disadvantaged and marginalized. And these policy perspectives and formulations have a multidimensional view of poverty, growth and development. And the focus has been on our fundamental rights and the need to expand opportunities while ensuring its equal distribution for human well-being and development. Given this scenario, however, we can't retract or ignore the bigger societal picture of which Justice Hegde made a very, very powerful kind of a visual, almost a visual picture of this extremely uneven and unequal distribution of the benefits of growth and the growing disparity in our society, which many believe, people like me also included in it, is the root cause of social unrest. Companies too have been the target of those perturbed by this uneven development, and as a result, their contributions to society are under severe scrutiny. With increasing awareness of this gap between the haves and the have-nots, this scrutiny will only increase over time and societal expectations will be on the rise. Many companies have been quick to sense this development and have responded proactively, while others have done so only when pushed to the wall. So these laws, the latest CSR mandate under the Companies Act is one such pushing and prodding. So governments as well as regulators, they have responded to this unrest, and they have been, just to sort of, in our gathering, context of this gathering, I quote these two major policy which you all are familiar with, formulations which the government has brought out, which is one is the National Voluntary Guidelines for Social, Environmental and Economic Responsibilities of the Business, or the NVGs, which was brought out by Ministry of Corporate Affairs in 2011. And as part of this, the guidelines, it was mandated by SEBI to produce business responsibility reports for the top 100 companies. And the other one, of course, is the 2013 CSR clause included in the Companies Act. So in the inclusion of the CSR mandate to the dashboard of the boards of the Indian companies under the Companies Act is an attempt to supplement the government efforts of equitably delivering the benefits of growth and to engage the corporate world with the country's development agenda, which is looking at organizational success on social, ecological and economic fronts all at once. And the triple bottom line also addresses the three key concerns of planet, people and profit. So the Indian industry has responded positively to these reform measures with a wide interest across the public and private sector, Indian and multinational companies. And we also know that, that philanthropy and the kind of social responsibility is not new to Indian companies. There has been a tradition of philanthropy deeply rooted in some of the the most recognized business houses we know in India for the last more than 50 years. However, despite this kind of the willingness and the understanding of looking at the simultaneously the sociological, the ecological and the economic agenda, there is still a lot of ground to cover as confusions and contradictions galore. Trust deficit needs to be bridged, and accountability mechanisms based on the core values and principles of moral duty and ethical practices still need to guide the CSR agenda. In this regard, if I may share another thought with you and ask you to reflect upon, which is what makes our CSR agenda different? Can we bring in the same seriousness, prestige and pursuit of excellence to realizing the goal of social change for equality, inclusion and fairness that we give to achieving the goals of economic development, profit maximization and growth through our businesses? I would like to spend now the remaining few minutes that I have to bring in especially the voices and experiences from the space of civil society and development sector. And these kind of reflections are on what could be the scope, nature and quality of engagement of the civil society organizations with the corporate and business sector, and what are the associated challenges and opportunities in doing so. In this regard, I again would like to quote from a sociology professor from the University of Brunswick, USA, Nancy Nason Clark. Quote begins with, "When our passion is rooted in the voices and experiences of others, it becomes quite powerful. A powerful inspiration to be the change." The last segment is added and adapted by yours truly. As CSR in our country is still very much in the making, quote unquote, very much in the making, therefore it is the most opportune time for both the sides, the civil and development sector organizations and the business sector institutions, to engage with each other. The role of civil society in fueling this change is bound to be extremely important. With the new corporate resources within their reach, much will depend upon the ability of the civil society organizations to innovate, to adapt, to engage. If increased spending under the CSR is to achieve results as is mandated under the Act, then it needs to be done systematically and thoughtfully. It is therefore the right time for corporates and business houses to invest in developing concrete strategy and guiding frameworks to identify areas of working together with the civil society, of forming non-traditional partnerships, and develop models and tools of the why, how and what of responding to emerging sectors requiring major transformation. And I am referring to the social sectors here. So some of the key social concerns and developmental areas to look through the CSR agenda could be from the civil society angle. These are youth leadership, skill building and entrepreneurial development, women and children's empowerment, urban safety, human and social security, peace building and conflict resolution, social and economic entitlements of the poor and deprived, access of masses to the digital connectivity, distress migration, rural livelihood, ecological nurturance and green wisdom. The list by no means is exhaustive. It's the kind of areas which have repeatedly now in the last 5-10 years of my engagement in the with the civil society, and largely from the women's movement and women's organizations perspective, these are the concerns which I have sort of culled together, and also working with the youth groups and youth mobilization programs. These are the concerns which I felt were very current and very hotly kind of looked at when the civil society is looking at engaging with the corporates. So let's think outside the hat. Think of taking the non-trodden route, of coming out of our comfort zones. Think if the women's human rights and children with their individual identity and rights are put on the CSR agenda. Because I know that these are the issues which are still not in the realm of what we are looking for corporations to add to their social responsibility, to look at it from the rights perspective and not as a benefactor, as a beneficiary and a service provider as a client. So here I am asking for these children and women not to be seen as passive recipients of our welfare and charity fees. Think if our business interests could be responsive to the diversity of issues of reaching out to people with different abilities, needs, their atypical life choices and orientations, and thereby facing severe stigma and deprivation because of the life choices they have made. Think if our businesses could put inclusion as central to their economic and development agenda. thereby enhancing the agency of the millions of the vulnerable sections of our society who have been left out of on the margins of our and global growth story. If I may ask, can we and how do we prepare ourselves to be comfortable to work with the community-based and people's organizations? Because I think that's an area of, of feeling confident, of being willing, of being, looking at the community-based people's organizations from a lens of not just receivers and providers, but as so that's where I am coming from. That I also in this space of looking how do we prepare ourselves to engage with people's organizations, to include in this space the women's groups, the special interest groups, the ecological agencies, the groups, institutions promoting social and cultural rights, social entrepreneurs, and organizations which are research, knowledge and advocacy based, and other non-traditional developmental sector stakeholders. So, I'm just trying to very kind of, it may seem a little abrupt, but I wanted to fill in with the kind of the constituencies and the areas of concerns from the civil society space. So bear with me if you find that, there is, if it is little abrupt. The CSR mandate under the Companies Act, I believe, presents a unique opportunity to make a paradigm shift towards structured engagement in the civil society space for bringing transformational change. A shift from looking at shareholders to stakeholders, as mentioned above. For developing a robust CSR strategy or CSR programs would need to build on the foundation of an organization that is socially sensitive and responsible. And in my understanding, this would require all of us to be led by our heart, guiding the mind, and the mindfulness leading to action for change for the betterment and well-being of all. It's time to leapfrog, to reinvent and reinvest for being socially innovative and morally responsive. And what are the kind of challenges if we want to leapfrog? I thought that, the first challenge is looking at the way government treats this whole agenda of CSR, of pushing the agenda for the CSR. So, I completely agree with Justice Hegde because we also see that governments have stopped short at legislating or making policy proclamations. And it is taking an increasingly easier route of either doling out services and goodies in a benefactor mode for appeasement, or simply walking away, shying away from its responsibility and accountability as the primary duty bearer to secure the rights of the citizens under our country's constitution. So now, and if we are to look at the challenges from the side of the corporates and businesses, the key kind of challenges are around the issues of corporations working mode being very, very opaque and without transparency or information sharing. So the inclination to report and disclosure under the new national voluntary guidelines, from my understanding, is a positive development. And the other challenge is that most of these activities supported under philanthropy are cast in a kind of a very set, traditional, stereotypical mold with little creativity or innovation. So what you have is mainly, donations, and grant making is still a very evolving, a nascent way of coming forward with our understanding of the CSR. And these, so usually the chosen areas of intervention are related with education and health, with mostly underprivileged children and women. And there are very few models to assess the impact of the CSR work. And the aims of the programs under the CSR are fairly broad, something like to eradicate illiteracy. So, it could be as broad as, or to service the humankind. And which are tough to qualify. In giving grants or offering support to NGOs, most companies do not follow an open process of inviting applications and evaluating proposals. Instead, they make allocations on their own judgment and recommendations. And there is a traditional deficit of trust between profit-driven companies and socially motivated NGOs. As a result, companies like to work with NGOs they know and understand, leaving out large number of genuinely committed NGOs and creating more distance between themselves. And it is challenging for the companies to resist from thinking from a narrow view of achieving short-term goals and not get caught by the anxiety of seeing immediate results and do a cost-benefit analysis of the social investments made by them. To provide support for a long-term vision and approach for creating impact of social change in the communities requires openness and perseverance. To support qualitative interventions, it requires sensitivity to serve with an empowering approach towards the community and not view them as passive recipients or beneficiaries. It requires keeping an ear to the ground to learn and understand the causes, concerns and contexts of these communities. It requires engaging with stakeholders as equal partners while linking with state mechanisms to actualize their rights and entitlements. This is an approach which is still new and evolving as a work culture, and its ethics still being refined and is to be seen very much as work in progress. I come back once again to quote Rebecca Irvin. Remember, I began with her quote in the beginning. Quote begins with, "It is hard to do things right. It is not just a question of how much money you give. It is also that you give the right people the right amount of support at the right time. And it is very difficult to give away money well." Rebecca Irvin is currently, leading this Rolex Laureates for Enterprise, which is looking at supporting innovative people with interesting innovations. And they have set up a very, very unique art support program which brings together the art community for coming for the social concerns. So very interesting CSR example. So summing up the takeaways from the above said challenges while defining the CSR agenda is to avoid looking at short-term gains and look at the long-term impact, bringing focus on the qualitative improvement in the well-being with whom the corporates are going to be engaged, and to deliver on the promise of implementation, to work with humility and openness with the communities on the ground and not be led too much by centrally controlled processes. And from these challenges, we also see the opportunities. In South Asia, corporate responsibility is becoming a prerequisite for sourcing goods and services. GAP, for example, inspects every factory in its supply chain for speed, innovation, cost, and social responsibility standards, and rejecting about 15% every year. Nike has also positioned itself as another socially conscious brand, and the list is quite impressive. I've just given the two examples here. So it has become clear that some sort of CSR policies are necessary to give companies a comparative edge in global business arena. Another trend is the emergence of institutes and NGOs that work specifically on raising the awareness of CSR through workshops and conferences, and consulting services that advise firms on CSR. Vandana is, a new entrant in this arena itself of consulting service on CSR. A whole new generation of industrialists is now more amenable to working with NGOs, and business schools are teaching CSR more seriously. New and attractive models of firm-NGO partnerships are emerging. So there is an environment of innovative ideas, and platform for these have increased. So the latest, if you have followed on the NDTV India, there is with Hitachi, they have had this series of consultations called CSR to Social Innovation, Leap into the Future. So, and there they had about 40 one of the most prominent industrialists coming and speaking about the agenda of social innovation. So the companies are moving beyond, looking at moving beyond corporate social responsibility to social innovation. There is a danger involved in it as well, but won't go into that at the moment. But we'll celebrate the spirit of looking at social responsibility from the newer angles, newer areas of engagement. So there is an example of Mahindra's Spark the Rise that pledges about 4 crores of Indian rupees as seed capital to nearly 50 socially relevant innovative ideas. And we have now huge number of examples, individual examples of organizations which are supporting the socially innovative ideas. So this whole term, which is now in currency, is the socialpreneur, and which now the social change, the social startups, the social enterprise startups is gaining a lot of popularity because there is a support coming from the corporates. And in that space, there is also the traditional directly operating their own charities or through their own non-profit foundations, trust and company setups, or supporting independently registered non-profit organizations that have a record of at least 3 years in similar such related activities. And the final way of engaging is collaborating or pooling the resources with other companies. CII and FICCI have provided for such pooling platforms. I had a list of some of these based on whether it is the direct approach of starting running your own charity or through your own some of the prominent examples, but I think I'll skip it looking at the time. But in terms of one example which I think since we are in this city, the example which I definitely would like to not miss is the Azim Premji Foundation. Mr. Azim Premji has pledged, as you know, $4 billion to the Azim Premji Foundation for a kind of a long-term overhaul of the education system in India. So it's a kind of a path breaking and gesture innovation by amongst the industrialists based in Bangalore that we can draw a lot from, and there is a lot of interesting initiatives which one can look at happening under the foundation. I would like to now just sort of close by this quote of Alfred Tennyson. As we prepare to exit from the year 2014 and enter 2015, I wish for us that, quote, hope smiles from the threshold of the years to come, whispering it will be happier. Thank you and wish for peace, equanimity and justice to prevail for all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is from the corporate world, a more familiar word for most of us here. He's had a long stint as a senior member of the Tata Group. He's been the COO, CSO of Titan. He's been a mentor for many of the CEOs of the group companies of Tata. He's currently a partner with New Silk Route Advisors, a growth capital firm investing in private companies in India and some part of Asia. He's going to speak to us about the social responsibility of corporates. Let's all welcome Jacob Kurian.
Hi. I didn't know when I accepted this invitation, that I was going to be the guy in the crosshairs of the evening, representing the big bad world of the corporates. as Guru mentioned right at the beginning, you know, is corporate social responsibility or corporates and social an oxymoron? Is it something, are these two very different worlds? And in many ways, you know, through the many years that I've worked in the corporate sector and tried to partner with the social sector, I must say that, you know, you do often feel you are from two very different worlds. Years ago, I came back to India, and one of my ambitions was that I wanted to do, when I got the occasion, a fundraiser like they did, like I had watched people in America do. And an opportunity came, and we got this program underway. And one of the fundraising opportunities, which was unknown at that time, certainly far more common now, was to have a dinner where we sold tables to different corporates. And so I had called somebody, and he was the CEO of a large multinational, and he said, yeah, sure, 25,000 bucks, not a problem. We will, we'll be happy to buy a table. So I thought it would be nice if the beneficiary NGO went there to collect the amount. And so I called them, and they said, so I said, you know, why don't you go up and meet this guy? So they were a little hesitant, but with some persuasion, they went off to the fancy offices of this MNC. And later that evening, called to say that they didn't get the check. So I said, are you sure? Because, you know, I spoke to the CEO himself. So I said, okay, did you go in and, you know, ask to meet the CEO? And they said, no, we went to the reception, and we met his secretary, and the offices were so swank. We've never been in a place like that. We felt intimidated right from the beginning. And he came out, said something, we weren't even sure what he said, and he went back, and his secretary said, okay, now leave. So I called the CEO, and I said, so what happened, eh? What happened? I thought you guys were... So he said, I thought you said you're sending me some NGO to collect the money. So I said, yeah, I did. They are from the NGO. But they are so well dressed. They didn't look... So he genuinely believed that people from the NGO sector should look like, you know, people who needed help. And the fact that these two ladies who were very competent professionals in that sector didn't, for him, meant that the NGO was really not worth supporting. So we quite often look at the social sector with our own corporate lens and with our own personal biases and prejudices, and I'm sure they do the same. You know, they look at us with a high level of mistrust. A lot of what Vandana said about, you know, lack of transparency, lack of commitment, etc., is all testament to years of this so-called relationship, which has a big wall in between. We toss things over the wall and hope someone on the other side catches it. The business of corporates, as one set of corporate leaders would attest and often debated at business schools, the business of corporates is to be in business and to make a profit and to create jobs and to give opportunities and to pay their taxes And as Justice Hegde said, it is quite often the role of the government and the welfare state to take those taxes and put it to productive use. So there is, and certainly if you go to different parts of the developed world, there are people who believe very strongly that, you know, these two should be kept very distinct. I pay my taxes, that's it. You know, my job is to increase the amount of taxes that I can pay by doing better and better. But if you talk to a lot of Indian leaders and Indian corporates, I don't know whether it's a legacy of our socialist past or whether it is because Indians are still not comfortable saying that, you know, the creation of wealth, a single-minded pursuit of wealth is kind of okay. But most Indians, and I think it's a positive, most Indian leaders will always at least concede that we have as corporates a bigger role and a larger responsibility than purely the pursuit of profits. Now, having said that, I'm afraid that too few really follow up on that statement. I have had the privilege of working in the Tata Group, the work that the Tata Trusts do, and the legacy of the institutions that the Tatas have left the nation are remarkable by the standards of you know, even developed countries. There are now certainly many other large groups, the Premji Foundation being one, the Mittal Foundation and many others, who are trying to emulate some of that. But they are still too few, and too many are not doing even remotely as much as they could be doing. I think there are several examples within our own city here of very successful companies that always seem to grab the headlines for doing very little. And on the scale of what they do in terms of revenues and turnovers and stuff, I think there is justifiable cause for people to say, you're not doing as much as you could do. But be that as it may, I think most people will say that, oh well, it's very easy for a large corporate to do all these things. And so what I want to do today is really not to talk about the Mittal Foundation or the Tata Trust, but to talk about what ordinary people, small companies, medium-sized companies could do. I now work with a multitude of companies in our portfolio. We are investors, and one of the things that I try to do is talk to many Indian promoters about the fact that, yes, as financial investors, we'd love for your business to make a lot of money, but there is an opportunity for you to also do something beyond the two forms of bribery that is most prevalent in India, masquerading as CSR, right? You bribe the local politician or the local corporator or the local this thing, or you bribe your local temple, church, mosque, etc. And those are the two forms of giving that we're all very comfortable doing, and everybody does. But when you get to trying to structure something which is more substantive, I'm always told, oh well, I don't know what to do. Okay, we don't know what to do. We want to, but we don't know what to do. We don't know whom to give it to, and we don't know how much to give. The first one is, you know, beggar's belief, because in a country with the kind of needs that India has, to say that someone can't find a cause is quite staggering. Now he may be spoiled for too much choice and may not know which one to pick, but to say he didn't know which one, he couldn't find a cause is kind of staggering. So what I normally suggest is, and maybe this is controversial to those from the social sector, but what I suggest quite often is that, can we approach this like we would do a business? Okay? Let's pick an area that we want to focus on. Let's select how we want a strategy to go about it. Let's set objectives, both short-term and longer-term. Let's resource it, not with the guys who you couldn't find any job for and you didn't know what to do, but resource it like you would resource any other area of activity where you want to make a measurable impact. Execute, measure, not input, but outcomes. It is amazing that when we come to this part of our work, we immediately stop thinking like we would do for every other part of the day. And it suddenly becomes, okay, well, I'll write him a check, just go away, don't bother. And over time I've found that what works best is if we could create an alignment between what the company can do or wants to do, between its skill sets. Okay? And in some ways, if we could create outcomes that are a win-win for both. Now, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Certainly if you're a law firm, it's probably better for you to try and find something in the area that you know and you have skills than to attempt to go and make, say, school furniture. You neither know where to source the wood from, you don't know enough carpenters, you don't know how to design it, you don't know how to quality control it. But certainly for most corporates, we have enough of a sphere of influence for us not to be able to say that we cannot find an area where we can bring all our collective competencies to bear. And when we do that, okay, in my experience of working through many such things, when we do that and when we work in the area that we are comfortable with and where we have skill sets and where we have relationships and where we have a degree of influence, then it seems more mainstream as opposed to being outsourced to a bunch of guys. Guys, go away, don't disturb me, or I'll come there, cut the ribbon, I won't show. The other very important truism about corporate giving and corporate partnerships is again true of every other form of corporate work. One of the things that amazed me when I joined the Tatas, worked here for many years, then went overseas to America to work at a joint venture that the Tatas had with a multinational corporation. And one of the things that that corporation was doing was doing a fundraiser for United Way. And I was just amazed at how much of merchandising, promotional activities there were inside the offices of the store. And they had a very traditional American thing, they had a pancake breakfast. And since I was new and I didn't know what it meant, I went along to see, what is a pancake breakfast. What amazed me was that standing there behind the griddle flipping pancakes was the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar corporation. And of course, as all corporates know, because the CEO was there, the VPs had to be there. Because the VPs who were there, the GMs had to be there, and so on and so forth. So the power of leadership, being front and center of the CEO or the founder himself, committing that this is a cause that he is prepared to back, has tremendous effect across the organization. And it's amazing that we don't, I mean, we do that for every other strategic objective. When it comes to this, somehow we never seem to do that. The other opportunity that we've felt large corporates, small corporates can do is to try and engage all stakeholders. Okay? And by that I mean, you know, despite the great work that the Tata Trusts have done, most Tata executives only bask in the reflected glory of the Tata Trust. Okay, so I, for example, had never done anything with the Tata Trust in all the years that this thing. I, of course, loved when people said, hey, you Tatas are so fantastic. And I said, yeah, of course. I loved it. But I did nothing about it. And I always felt that, you know, for this to become real and meaningful to everybody, more than the HR department or the CSR department needed to get involved. And can we get not just the leadership, but also the rank and file engaged, involved, and feeling that they are participating in something that the company is trying to achieve. The other opportunity is the fact that you often have a large circle of influence. You have suppliers, vendors, consultants, many small and large organizations that you work with who are all sitting there saying, I want to do something, but I don't know how, I'm too small, I don't have time. And when you give them the opportunity to participate, many of them do step forward and participate and collaborate. So you could bring all these stakeholders into this partnership, and it becomes a whole lot more powerful, a whole lot more engaging, and a whole lot more satisfying when everybody in the ecosystem is working on it, as opposed to just a few. And you know, Vandana gave a list of great you know, objectives, areas that work is needed. Many of them, when you look at it, the size and scale of the problem is just too daunting. And most corporates say, well, I got this quarter's numbers to meet, I got next month's board meeting. And therefore you get into this paralysis of, my God, how do I solve hunger or nutrition or education? Start small. You start very small. And once you've done that, you will have the confidence to do something else and something else. So I'm going to end with just two case studies of stuff that we did. The Tatas are famous for being fourth quartile paymasters. So it was often the uniting factor was cribbing about your salaries and how terribly paid we were. And we used to have, you know, whole bunches of people from the top design schools coming, joining us because of our reputation, and then discovering that, shit, everybody else is earning more money. We have this visiting card, but nothing much else in the bank. And so quite often you'd find young people who should have been at their most optimistic, hanging around, bitching and moaning. One of the exercises we decided we would do, talking about it, we felt was, you know, most white-collar people in India live within their nice little bubbles, and the other India is kind of an inconvenience to drive past. So we said, okay, how do we get these guys out of their, you know, toit, UB City bubble and engage with a little bit of the real world? We didn't have the resources to go out into the jungles and work in, but outside every swank little island in India, just next to it, is the real India. And so we were on, as you know, Golden Enclave is on one side of Airport Road. There's a slum actually on the other side. We decided to pick, there was some program that the government was running which flopped, but it gave us an occasion to go and visit a government school that was in the middle of the slum. And frankly, most of us had never been to a government school. So we went there, not sure what we were going to see. And we saw actually a pretty decent building, brick and mortar building in a little courtyard. There weren't too many kids there. The building didn't look like it had been painted ever since it had been built. So we went in there, we met this principal, and we said, we want to adopt the school as a project to try and see if we could bring some change to it. Okay? So the first stage of any of these attempts, suspicion. But why? So we said, no reason, we just want to find something to do outside work. And we thought we'd just do it here. Why? No, I better check with the block education officer. Did you speak to the corporator? No, we don't want to have anything to do with the corporator. We just really want to do something in this school. So it took actually 3 meetings before we were allowed to go in and start to do something. One of the first things we noticed was, it's an all-boys school. So we said, okay, it's a boys' school. They said, no, it's actually it's a co-ed school, but there are no girls because the boys can go and pee under the tree. The girls can't. Okay. So we said, isn't that the toilet block? And they said, yeah, there's a toilet block, but there's no water. Why isn't there any water? Because we don't have power. Didn't you notice? We went there during the day, so we didn't notice that the lights were off. So they said there's no power. Why is there no power? Well, the government hasn't given us money to pay the bills, so the KEB has disconnected power. So we can't pump water into the loo, so the girls have all dropped out. And so on and so forth, okay? So all it took really for us was to call our building contractor, to call batchmates who were by now fairly senior in Asian Paints, to get some cans of paint, get some brushes, get that bathroom repaired, pay the meager amount to get electricity reconnected, and to get our brilliantly talented designers to give them that whole school, all the walls, and they transformed that place into a fabulously looking place to go and study. But there was still a problem. The teachers, she said, every month we lose 10 kids. Where did it go? Oh well, someone started a private school nearby, and over there they charge $300. This is free. And this is a slum. 10 years ago. Over there they provide lunch. So people are leaving our school, which is free, to the private school. And all it took for us at that time, Akshay Patra at that time, was $6. Okay? So we gave them 300 kids into $6, 1,800 rupees into whatever. We got that money, it was embarrassingly little. We got that raised in no time. And we were able to not just transform that school, but more importantly, many of the people who used to spend their time cribbing and mourning started to go back and volunteer there after work, on weekends, etc. Now, was this a great transformational, earth-shaking event? No. Did it require huge corporate resources? No. It was something that anybody can do to get started. You could also do things at much larger scale. So we had something called the Tata Council for Community Initiatives. I hope nobody from TCCI is here, but TCCI was an effort to get Tata companies in different cities to collaborate in doing something for society. Various vice presidents were assigned to that committee. My former boss was the head for Bangalore. After 6 years, the collective might of the Tata Group in Bangalore, which I should remind you includes many, many large companies, had managed to donate 19 sewing machines over the 6 years. However, they had also managed to consume many pastries, cups of coffee at the Taj West End, where the TCCI invariably met. Now, it would have very much remained that way, but for the fact that suddenly Mr. Deshmukh, the former cabinet secretary, was appointed to Tata Sons, and he said, all TCCI councils, please report what work you've done. So my boss had to suddenly get up and say, oh shit, what have these guys been doing? And we discovered this is what they had done. So he said, okay, we are now in panic mode, let's find something that we can do. So I was given that problem to try and solve. And what we did was we actually called in, we said we don't have the time to gain any expertise in this. We called in 2 NGOs. We said, okay, what is it that kids in this city lack the most? And no, it wasn't hunger, no, it wasn't education, it certainly wasn't sanitation, though all of these 3 they certainly lack. But what did kids really want? And what they said was, children in underprivileged societies and locations, slums and stuff, what they lack is access to public spaces. So what we take for granted, the clubs, the malls, this thing, is something that they don't have access to. So it was a time in my life when my daughter, who was much younger then, and I would go on Sunday to Bal Bhavan and do that toy train ride. And now many of your parents and probably have done that. But there was always this whole patch called Bal Bhavan, which was kind of decrepit, run down, but it had this toy train that went around it. And we thought, okay, here's a fabulous public space that's grossly underutilized. We were fortunate that at that time we had a Bal Bhavan director who was open to actually partnering with the private sector. Again, huge amount of skepticism. Why would you want to do this? What are you trying to do? Is this a land grab under the guise of blah, blah, blah? But very quickly what we did there was we got a leading architecture firm that did a lot of work for us to come in and landscape the place. We took the right side. If you enter Bal Bhavan, there is a dividing road. The station, the toy train station is on the left, we took the right. We re-landscaped it, we created an amphitheater, we upgraded all the playground equipment, and we had 3 phases in it. So whenever our designers traveled to Basel, to the watch fair, or to England to do some store design, they were encouraged to go to science museums, encouraged to go to see new playgrounds. And our 3-year vision on it was playground. Next was a playground with science equipment, and we had some really great ideas. And the last thing, which again came from watching my daughter whenever she went to Kerala to visit her grandparents. City kid, her biggest thrill was running after goats, trying to catch the ducks, and so we had a petting zoo planned near the lake. We got the first phase done. We had a huge argument about how much money we should keep for maintenance with the Bal Bhavan employees. And like all good things, all of us moved on. I look at it now, it has remained exactly where it was. No petting zoo, no science museum. But the point I wanted to make was that it is possible, once you engage a larger group of people, to come up with some great things to do. If any single person had tried to go and wrestle with the bureaucracy, would have come back defeated or dejected. But because there were so many people involved in that effort, we could get great things done. And that really is what I want to leave with you. The Tata crest, says, good thoughts. That I'm sure we all have in abundance. Good words. That some of us do more than actually the third thing on the crest, which was good deeds. So please go away from here challenging yourselves that small or big, partnership, big conglomerate or small corporate, you can make a difference. Thank you.